And joining me now is the former Prime Minister Tony Abbott. Welcome back. It's been a while.
It's been too long, Lee, but it's good to be with you and your viewers tonight.
Mr Abbott, let's start with the political issues of the day. Wasn't it a bit rich of you to chide Malcolm Turnbull on Twitter for considering negotiations on gun laws when, under your leadership, the government actually did that?
Well, I was actually chiding Senator Lionhelm, and the point to make, Lee, is that these guns, these rapid-fire guns, were coming into Australia. The Abbott government stopped them, and the Turnbull government has kept them stopped. So you can trust this government to keep our nation safe.
But you haven't actually addressed my question, which is that you've been claiming that you would never negotiate on gun laws, but the evidence is that you actually did.
No. There's an email from a staffer in a minister's office. But as far as I'm concerned as Prime Minister, the instant I heard these guns were destined for Australia in large numbers, these rapid-fire guns, I said, no, we've got enough guns in this country already. Shooters are good people, but the last thing we want is even more lethal guns in this country, because sooner or later, the more guns you've got, the more likely it is that they'll fall into the wrong hands.
Let's have a look at that email that you just referred to. It's between the Office of the Justice Minister and Senator David Lionhelm's office. It says, we confirm that Ministers Dutton and Keenan have agreed the government will amend XYZ regulations to insert a sunset clause of 12 months into the recently amended provisions which ban the importation of lever-action shotguns. And at the bottom it says, in return, Senator Lionhelm will vote against the Labor amendments to the Migration Amendment. I've also got dated a couple of weeks before you finished as Prime Minister, the Governor-General ratifying that sunsetting of firearms and firearm magazines provisions.
Yeah, the bottom line in all this, Lee, is that the guns were stopped because of the Abbott government, only because of the Abbott government. But for the Abbott government, we would now have tens of thousands of these weapons in our country, and they're staying stopped because of the Turnbull government. Now, this question about a sunset clause, just about every regulation has a sunset clause, and I suspect that what these staffers were doing was telling the good senator what was happening anyway, as a matter of course, in an attempt to get him to support something that we thought was a very good idea.
But just to try to clarify,
the point I want to make, Lee, is that there were
I'm sorry to interrupt, because I just want to clarify.
No deals.
I just want to clarify this, because clearly I just read out that there was a deal to insert that sunset clause in exchange for support for a migration amendment. I just read it out.
Wrong. A staffer in a minister's office, no deals from me, no deals from my office, no deal.
But hang on, he's a minister in your government. No, sorry, but he's a minister in your government.
These guns were stopped. These guns were stopped because of the Abbott government. But for the Abbott government, we would now have tens of thousands of these weapons in this country. The Abbott government stopped them. Now, I stress, gun owners are good people, but the more guns we have, the more likely it is that they'll fall into the wrong hands. And let's not forget, it only took one ancient shotgun to lock down the city of Sydney as part of the Lint siege for some 18 hours. Now, when it comes to community safety, you've always got to err on the side of caution, and that's what the Abbott government did.
How does tweeting disapproving commentary about government negotiations help your own side?
Well, this was a point that was put to the government by Senator Lionhelm, and the point which has been repeatedly stressed by the Prime Minister yesterday and today is that these weapons will stay banned until they've been fully dealt with.
But that's not what I asked, Mr Abbott. I asked, how does you weighing in help your own side get clean air to prosecute the agenda it wants to prosecute?
Well, I was part of the Howard government. I was very proud to be a part of the Howard government back in 1996, when Australia got very, very good gun laws that have kept this country much safer than comparable countries for the best part of 2 decades. And the last thing that an independent senator with an obsession should be allowed to do is potentially water down these things.
For the third time, he was making
an Abbott claim,
help your own side.
And the important thing was for this senator to be reminded that the ABCC bill should be supported on its merits.
You must realise, though, that because of who you are, when you put out a tweet like that, it is viewed in a particular way.
My determination, Lee, is to be the best possible member for Warringah in this term of Parliament. But occasionally, on important national and international issues, as a former Prime Minister, I will have something to say. Now, as a senior member of the Howard government, the government which put these world best practice gold standard gun laws into place, I think it's very important that we do not play games with laws that have kept our country safe. And that's what this senator was apparently seeking to do.
All right, let's have a look at some other matters. On this weekend, the New South Wales Liberals will be gathering for their annual general meeting. And one of the things that you've been pushing is that all members should vote on the pre-selection of candidates, not just smaller panels. Given that you, Malcolm Turnbull, John Howard, Mike Baird all want to see reform, is it just a case now of that being rubber stamped?
Well, let's see what happens on Saturday, Lee, but you're absolutely right. From Malcolm Turnbull and Mike Baird down, there is an agreement that we should have one member, one vote plebiscite pre-selections in New South Wales, the same as in Victoria, Queensland and South Australia. And this matters because the more vigorous and dynamic a political party is, the better our democracy is, and the more members you've got, the better the pool of candidates from which to draw. So this isn't just about the Liberal Party, it's about the quality of our democracy. And yes, with all of those people supporting it, it certainly should go through, but never underestimate, Lee, the power of inertia, and unfortunately in New South Wales, never underestimate the power of factions as well. And
you mentioned
there's been a stitch-up in New South Wales for too long.
You mentioned the party's membership. Since the 1970s, the Liberal Party's membership has fallen from more than 50,000 to under 10,000 today. Isn't part of the problem then, along with the way you select candidates, surely that you must not be advocating policies that attract mainstream Australians for your numbers to have fallen so substantially?
Well, I think there's a complex range of factors here, but certainly if we want to boost the Liberal Party's membership, it's going to help if you can say, well, join the Liberal Party and you will have a direct personal say in the one vital function that a political party fulfills, that is to choose decent, sensible candidates for Parliament. If we don't give our rank and file members this responsibility, it's very hard to see why they'd want to join. If they're only joining to hand out on polling day and to turn up at fundraisers, it's a very serious disincentive to be a New South Wales Liberal.
Well, let me give you a policy example though. Let's take voluntary euthanasia. Polls show 75% of Australians support it. If you just isolate that to coalition voters, it's about 69%. And yet the Parliamentary Liberal Party is vehemently opposed. So you've got an issue there where 69% of coalition voters would like to see you embrace that, and yet you haven't.
And this is why it would be a good thing. I mean, I have my own views on that particular issue, and you won't be surprised that they're fairly traditional and conservative views, Lee. But as a general principle, it is absolutely vital that we have a larger and more representative Liberal Party in New South Wales, the biggest state in Australia, the state where, unfortunately, the government almost lost the election back in July. So this is a very important part of maximising our chance of winning both the next state and the next federal election.
The final presidential debate in the US is happening tomorrow. Who would you rather see as United States President, Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump?
Well, whoever wins, Australia will have to deal with them.
And who would you rather see?
Well, obviously I've expressed some views about different things that different candidates have said, but I think as a general rule, Lee, it's not a good look for former Australian politicians, former Australian Prime Ministers, to be buying into elections overseas.
Well, the former Prime Minister John Howard said, "I tremble at the thought of Trump being president. There's an instability about him that bothers me." You said last week that many of Trump's policies are reasonable enough. Which assessment should Australians trust, yours or John Howard's?
Well, in the end, it's not our vote. It's the American people's vote. And look, I think we should have the best possible relations with the American president. And that's why I think we should try to avoid offering a gratuitous commentary on American politics. Of course, the kind of smutty stuff that came out last week is absolutely reprehensible. But in the end, the leader of America, the President of the United States, is the leader of the free world. And whoever that person is, the Australian government needs to work very closely with him or her.
Just finally, as you well know, party leaders don't stay in the job forever. When there is next a vacancy in the federal Liberal leadership, would you be interested in running?
Well, I'm not expecting a vacancy anytime soon.
But there always is one, though.
Oh, look, Lee, I think the last thing we need in this country is a revolving door Prime Ministership. That was one of the many, many reasons why I was an enthusiastic supporter of the re-election of the government, and I certainly want Malcolm Turnbull to be the best possible Prime Minister throughout this term.
There has been speculation that you'd like to get the top job back, though.
And then to win a thumping victory.
There has been speculation, though, that you'd like that top job back.
Well, it's not a question of what I might like, it's a question of what the party room wants, and the party room wants to end the revolving door Prime Ministership. The party room wants this government, this Prime Minister to succeed. That's what I want, Lee, and that's what I'm doing my best to bring about.
Tony Abbott, good to have you back on the program. Thank you.
Nice to be here, and let's not let it be so long till next time.
I thought you were going to say, let's not do it again. I was going to say, no, let's. Thanks very much.
Good on you, Lee.